So good morning, everyone. Welcome to this EU cluster collaboration talk on funding opportunities. We're taking a closer look at programs from the European Commission that the European Commission is in charge of, direct management programs, including Horizon Europe, Erasmus+, but there are so many others, and that's what we're going to hear about, how that works. And we're also going to hear from people who have been involved in getting that funding from those different programs, and how it can be difficult sometimes and how you can figure that out. We're going to help you figure that out. These are EU clusters talks, regular talks that are organized by the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, the ECCP, that comprises 1,500 organizations on behalf of DG GROW at the European Commission. I'm Chris Burns, and our agenda today is we'll start with a bit of news, then the European Commission on the funding programs, how it works, the presentations of 3 project examples, and a panel discussion, including you. We want to get you involved as much as possible, and then funding opportunities. Tech tips, housekeeping, your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen that you can see, or that other button on the bottom to raise your hand. And if you want to pose that question just directly on screen, you can do that. We can let you in to do that. Also, keep in mind that chat also. There's a lot of good information people exchange on the chat. And if you hear a good line to cast wider on the social networks, please do that with hashtag EU Clusters Talks. We're going to be tapping your brain as well with Slidos, a couple of Slidos, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And this is being recorded for playback, so just keep in mind that as well. Let's get started with news from the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. Nina Hauptmann, team member of the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. Nina, please.
Good morning, Chris, and good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with you this morning. And we would like to share some updates from our site. First of all, there is a new annual report adopted by the European Commission on the implementation of the Recovery and Resilience Facility, the 800 billion reform at the heart of Next Generation EU, or as the name says, recovery and resilience. Very interesting numbers in the report. It shows the progress that the member states make with the RRF on the economic and social resilience. And they also published an online interactive map of all the RRF supported projects in the member states. So there are hundreds of projects that you can browse. They're sorted by countries, and also different types, of course, that they address for either social topics, sustainability. Look at it. It can be very inspiring to see what kind of projects are supported by the RRF and to get inspired by these project examples. Last week, the Cluster Booster Academy took place. 21 cluster managers went to Torino for the second Booster Academy for a 2-day training on the 21st and 22nd of September. You see here some pictures from the events. And they discussed as key topics member engagement, providing new innovation services for their members as clusters, and identifying new members. So very interesting session for capacity building. And we can announce that the next Cluster Booster Academy will return next year. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for that. You're invited to join the Clusters Meet Regions events. We've been announcing this also in the last EU cluster talks. The next Clusters Meet Regions events, where we will talk about how clusters can have an active role in regional economies and be drivers for the twin transition and collaborate with regional stakeholders, will take place in France, in Czech Republic, in Germany, in Romania, and in Poland. You see the dates here in the screen, and for the first 3 that are listed here, the registration is open. So feel free to register and to come and meet us at the Clusters Meet Regions and discuss with us the role of clusters for the twin transition and regional collaboration. You can also meet us in Brussels on the 12th of October. This week is the last chance to register for our in-person cluster talk, where we will discuss clusters as drivers of the regional economic transition and the first results of these clusters meet regions events that I presented on the slide beforehand. So you can still register this week, and this event is embedded in the EU Weeks of Regions and Cities. So a full week packed of interesting events and talks in Brussels, where we warmly invite you to come and join us.
I look forward to see you there.
And of course, also a very important event, the EU Industry Days that take place a few days before, on the 4th until the 6th of October in Malaga in Spain. Very high level panels and keynotes that we will hear at the EU Industry Days, talking about resilience, open strategic autonomy, as well as Ukraine. And you can also still register for this to come to the EU Industry Days in Spain. And last but not least, an invitation from the Enterprise Europe Network. They will host a webinar on market opportunities for European SMEs in India. This webinar will take place on the 5th of October at 10 CET our time. You can register via the Zoom platform, and this webinar is for Indian companies. They can share their needs for green technologies and how they envision partnerships with European companies, and for the European companies and organizations to learn about the demands and how to collaborate with Indian companies. Also interesting, if you want to join, register now. And with that, I give back to you for our topic of the day.
Great, Nina, thank you so much. Let's take a look now at those funding programs under direct European Commission management. Let's talk to Christophe Galland, who's head of unit at DG Budget at the European Commission. Christophe, please enlighten us on how this works.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Indeed, I will present the program in direct management. It means that this is part of the EU budget, which is implemented directly at the central level. Conversely, there is a part of the budget which was presented in another session, which is managed by the member state and implemented at national or regional level. So here today, we speak of what is managed at central level, which means either by the Commission itself or by the executive agency. So we have 6 executive agencies which are specialized in the implementation of the program. We do the design of the program within the Commission, and then the executive agency are the one launching the call for proposal. So for the discussing with the beneficiary, I will come back to that in a moment. So this is what I will speak about today. Next slide, please. Just to remember that the EU has a limited set of competencies. So we're not active in all the fields. So we have, when we distribute money with support activity, we have to remain within the boundaries set by the EU treaty. We don't do everything. So our scope of activity is significantly more limited that legally than what member state can do. Second boundary is that it means the multi-annual financial framework cap or resources or expenditure around 1% of the GNI of the EU. So it's a small budget in comparison with the budget of the national and regional authority. So it's a second limitation. Therefore, what we do is very specific. There are specific objectives we want to do to use our budget for, and those are EU spending programs. So we adopt basic act of each program, which specify which are the objectives, what is the budget, and who are the beneficiary. So each program has a specific set of beneficiary based on the objective we try to achieve. And of course, we have to spend everything based on the EU financial regulation, which regulates for all the program the way we spend the money. So that's the overall framework. Next slide, please. So just to say that the majority of the EU budget is implemented by the member state in share management. So when we speak about direct management, it's around 1/3 of the EU budget, which is still managed at the European Commission, including executive agency. So it's a more limited part than what is spent, for instance, on cohesion and on agriculture, and which is implemented at the level of the member state. Next slide, please. Then to remember the usual path to the grant and to the payment, So how does it work for the program in direct management? Typically, those are competitive call for proposal. So you have to apply to a call for proposal, and then the proposal received are evaluated, and the best one are getting funding. So we sign a grant agreement. Then it's not over. There is the monitoring of the project implementation. We assess the result, and then we make the payment on that basis. So there is still a reporting, which is still important after the signature of the grant agreement. So it's competitive call. For certain program like Horizon, there is a very strong interest, and then we end up for certain calls having only 1 out of 10 applicants receiving funding. For other program, there is more funding available compared to the demand, and then the success rate of the applicant is higher. So there's no overall rule. Next slide, please. So now I will go through the main headings, which are the main group in the EU budget. Those are the heading of the EU budget, and in each heading I will try to highlight to you which are the main program which exist and which are launching call for proposals. So to which you can apply if you're working in that field. So the first one is Horizon Europe. As Chris said at the beginning, it is very well known, which is logical because in terms of budget, it is nearly as big as all the other I will speak about together. So it is really the largest program in direct management. This is really a big EU budget item. So it's normal that it is known. And it has many implementation mode and strands, like the European Research Council for Fundamental Research. There are various cluster. There are also cluster in Horizon Europe, not to confuse with your cluster. And then we support also innovation. So now recently there is the European Innovation Council, which was introduced. So it is really support from fundamental research for researcher and research institute to more applied development, support for a more applied development and more even innovation by SMEs. So there are different.
And Christophe, that's 95 billion over 7 years, isn't it? That's quite a lot.
Exactly.
Of money.
So it's really a big amount. Exactly close to 100 billion over 7 years. So it's really something big. But the calls are launched by the different bodies which are implementing the program, and which are specifically target each of them to a specific sector or a specific type of innovation. Then if we move to the next one, Connecting Europe Facility, this is a program which is supporting large infrastructure. So the infrastructure which are part of the Trans-European network, we want to develop European corridor, and therefore this is supporting mainly public entities and semi-public entities which are building railway tunnels and building the inter-country connection which are currently missing. So we want to support this. So we launched call for proposal there, and this is targeted at large infrastructure program in the field of energy, in the field of transport, green transport, and in the field of broadband connection and digital connection. Then under digital program, it's a Digital Europe program. It's a new program which has many different strands based on which are focused on artificial intelligence, cyber security, and more recently there is a new strand which was developed, which is a semiconductor strand, which is the CHIPS Act, the so-called CHIPS Act, which attracted some attention. And there we want to support both the research in the field of chips, but also really the deployment, and such that we can target to have 20% of the chips produced in the EU. So we launch call under the Digital Europe program from the executive agency in charge of implementing that program. Then we have the single market program, part of it, and maybe less relevant for because they target Eurostat statistics, but they are or public authority like food safety. But there is a part which is well known, which is a former COSME, and there it is really supporting SME. So that's a program which is quite a strand of the program which is well known by SMEs because it's supporting them in their growth. Then another program is the European Space Program. There we don't launch call for proposal to give grant to everybody. No, we are financing the building of an infrastructure. So the satellites, the ground infrastructure for the satellite, for security, communication, and quantum encryption. So what do we do there? We don't launch call for proposal, but we are procuring. So we are buying from firms infrastructure and equipment. So all the firms which are active in the space sector know that program well. It's a program which is implemented by the EU Space Agency and by the and then also powered by European Space Agency. So two different agencies which are implementing this program. So the firm which are producing space relevant equipment are should be in contact with those two agencies to see whether they can participate to the procurement which is done. Next slide, please. Then we have a series of program more focused on values, and so we have of course Erasmus Plus. Erasmus Plus is financing the mobility between students, so implemented by national agencies. We also finance collaboration between universities. So there we are launching call for proposal to which university have to apply for collaborative project. Then we have a small program, the European Solidarity Corps, which is financing volunteering in the EU. Then we have the Justice Program, which is more focused on public authority to strengthen the collaboration in the field of justice. Then we have a program which is growing inside. It is the program Citizen Equality, Rights and Value. So which aims at promoting the rights and value as enshrined in the EU Treaty and the Charter of Fundamental Rights. And there we are offering financial support to a series of organizations which are active in that field. So they are really more and more funding available there, but it's more targeted at social organization or NGOs which are working in that field. Then we have a last program which is quite well known. This is Creative Europe, supporting the creative sector, so supporting the production of cultural goods in the EU, and there it's offering interesting grants for the sector. Unfortunately, the budget is relatively limited compared to the demand which is there. Next slide, please. Then there is also, I will skip the first one because it's more targeted at public authority. EU for Health, we try more and more to build a European health space. So we develop exchange of data between national systems. So there again, we procure quite a lot of IT infrastructure. So any firm which is active in the health sector should look carefully at the calls which are and the procurement which occur on that program. The RF, I will Recovery and Resilience Facility, I will skip because it is more managed by the national authority. So at central level, we are not steering the use of the money. This is dictated by or decided in the national plan set up by the national authority. Next slide, please. Then here I would, in the support for natural resource and environment, I would really like to draw the attention to the Innovation Fund because it's a fund which has grown in size enormously. I mean, if the price of carbon remain at the elevated level where it is now, it's a program which will exceed 30 billion of grants distributed to beneficiary over 10 years. So really, if you're working on a market solution to decarbonize the European industry and support its transition, it is really a fund where you can potentially receive significant grants. It can be steel plants working on electricity. It can be now recently the clean hydrogen. So anything which contributes to decarbonize the European industry, we are launching calls on at least once per year with significant budget. I think we had 3 billion distributed last year. Next slide, please.
Yeah, Christophe, just I might mention that there is a live project that we're going to hear about from one of the project's presentations after you, so that people can find out more about how that works.
So that's an additional reason not to focus on the other program. Yeah. And then here in heading 5, security and defense, which is a new field of activity in the EU, and in particular in the field of defense. In the field of defense, we were not present in the past. This was considered that this is not part of the EU field of activity because the treaty says that this should be for the member state. But nevertheless, there is a strong industrial dimension there. So more and more, based on the industrial competencies of the Commission, we are developing more and more financial support for the defense industry to work together. So again, it's a bit the same logic as for Horizon Europe, but in the field of defense is that we are giving grants to support collaborative research projects in the research industry and common deployment and development of military equipment. So there are large calls for proposals which are launched with significant budget. It's more than 7 billion over this MFF. And this is clearly a field which is increase in the future. Next slide, please. So just to remember, I spoke about grants, which is the largest volume, but there are also some prize distributed in certain program. Of course, usually the size is more limited. Then, as I say, there are some procurement. So we are purchasing product and equipment on the market, so from firms. And then there are the financial instruments. Just to say a word about the financial instruments, they are implemented mainly by the European Investment Bank. So we give a guarantee from the EU budget on certain risk exposure, which the EIB will take. So the EIB is giving a series of loans to SMEs and to other firms, and we give them a guarantee to take over the credit risk from them to encourage them to do more in that field. But then again, the interlocutor is not directly the EU Commission; it's the EIB rather, which is advertising the product. Next slide, please. This is the key slide. Maybe is that all the funding and tender opportunities are available on website. So first of all, more explanation about the funding opportunities can be found on the Access to EU funding website. And then all the calls for proposals for all the program have been listing are in the CEDIA funding and tender portal. So this is really the place to go. And there you will see the condition for each of the calls, which have to follow the requirement of the Basic Act, the program behind. So that's why we try more and more to harmonize the condition, but they still depend on the Basic Act, because the co-legislator, when they decide to set up a program, they want to channel the money to certain beneficiary, or they want to have certain conditions fulfilled, specific for each sector and for each objective. So it's really important to look at the specific condition of the call. Next slide, please.
Christophe, by the way, that link there that you saw is actually in the chat, thanks to Marek. If you look there in the chat, you can see the web page for the tenders opportunities portal. Thanks a lot.
And so on the website how to apply, you will find some information. So general things to know before you start applying for EU funding. Then eligibility, really reminding what is the profile to have to be eligible to funding, because as I said, we don't distribute funding across the board. It's quite legally restricted to specific beneficiary and specific objectives. We explain more information about the application fund for process or the different steps. Then we explain the award procedure and the contract signature. So when we negotiate the grant contract with the selected beneficiary, we expect what is managed from you once you've been awarded the contract, the grant, because as I said, it's not over. There is reporting to do, there is audits, there is communication to make. So it's I will not hide it. It's quite a heavy process. The first time you do it, I think many people are scared, and it's true, it's heavy. But we cannot escape it. The reason is that there is a huge scrutiny on the use of the EU budget. The Parliament scrutinizes the Court of Auditor. There is huge sensitivity on the use of the EU budget. That's why we have to be sure that when we distribute money, it is well used. So we try to make that as light as possible, but this remains something quite heavy, unfortunately, because ourselves we are under tremendous pressure to demonstrate and that we have the control in place for the good use of the EU budget.
Christophe, if people do need help or advice or support on that, who can they go to for that?
So basically it will be with the entity which is managing the program. So if it's an executive agency, they will guide you through that. And they are of course in contact as their daily job to implement the EU budget. So they will be a contact person as soon as you sign a contract for explaining what is needed. But what I want to say is that it's a legally quite ring-fence project. So be careful that you will have to stay within the legal milestone if you want to get the full payment, which has been expected and signed and promised, because we will be able to pay only based on the full compliance of the condition which have been in the grant agreement.
Right.
And then next slide, please. Yes, so here there is that's the last slide. There is more information about the EU budget in general, which gives you more bigger vision on the EU budget, but which is maybe less relevant for if you want really to apply to calls. If you really want to apply to calls and look for concrete example of funding, it's better to look at the funding portal, which I mentioned before. Thanks a lot. I stop here.
Thanks a lot, Christophe. A real quick question for you from Jan. Is it possible for you briefly to outline the funding conditions of the Innovation Fund? Funding rate, max funding, etc. Are you able to say that in 2 sentences?
It's a very, very good question, but I would say it changes a lot depending on the course, because it's contrary to many programs. And to what I say as a general rule, we have quite a lot of flexibility to support different fields of activity in the green transition with the Innovation Fund. So, for instance, we support, recently we've introduced support for the production of green hydrogen. So there it's a completely different type of condition and financial support compared to another call, which is about using electricity to produce steel instead of using coal, which is very polluting. So I cannot give you a general rule. I would really advise to look at the specific calls which are launched, because there is quite a lot of heterogeneity in the calls launched by the Innovation Fund, because simply the greening of the industry has many different aspects, and each call is tailored to what we want to achieve. I apologize for this very general answer.
So I hope you can stay with us through this, because there are other questions coming in, but I want to stay on time, get to the Slido and presentation, so we can come back to Q&A if that's okay with you.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, merci Christophe. Let's move on to Slido. We want to tap your brain on after what you just heard, and if you can tell us, are you implementing or have you implemented a project funded by whom? And there you can join the Slido, slido.com with #direct management, or you just use that QR code. Tell us, which funds you have, which fund have you worked with? Or are you working with? A lot of Erasmus, single market. Okay, they're pouring in. It's quite a big distribution. I guess, Christophe, as you noted, that Horizon is the biggest, of course. So obviously that seems to be the most common, but it's also distributed among others. Any surprises for you there, Christophe?
If we look at in terms of budget, the single market program is quite small, so the 35% is quite encouraging, because it shows that despite the small budget, it allows to a significant number of entities to benefit from it.
Right. While we're letting those come in, let me ask you this one. Are there any restrictions? This is from Rostislav. Are there any restrictions for countries in the EU that can apply for funding? I think not, right? It's the 27, they're equal.
So the 27, exactly, they are equal. There are no restriction. We should not confuse. So the fund of direct management, they are accessible to everybody. Conversely, the fund of the cohesion share management, they are targeted at specific region. There is only one for, for Connecting Europe facility. There are a few calls which are linked to cohesion, which aim to support infrastructure in specific program. But for the general rule is that 27 equal for the funds in direct management.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's have a look at these results. Obviously, yes, Horizon is the biggest, so of course that would be the largest. But then, as you said, single market program, that's encouraging. Then Digital Europe, and then yeah, that's quite a distribution there. Very interesting. Okay, I think we move on. Let's move on to the projects examples, and let's begin with Björk Dam, project manager of the Life Science Cluster Denmark. Björk, you're going to tell about strengthened Danish participation in Horizon Europe through knowledge and business clusters. Björk, please.
Yes, thank you. That's it. Yes, as you mentioned, my name is Björk Dam. I'm a project manager at the Danish Life Science Cluster. It's the national cluster for life science and welfare technology. And just to touch up on who we are, our focus is to build partnerships to solve difficult societal challenges. I'm sure that even though you may not be in the life sciences yourself, I'm sure you know what that could be in the healthcare industry. Our focus is to unite all actors across the value chain and the health challenges and strategic partnerships to develop new solutions based on new technology, knowledge, and behavior. So of course, we do have a few EU projects. Inaxa is a Horizon project. Exiliving is a COSME project, and KDEX and Innocomtech are both Interreg. So we do have a few different types of projects. However, I will not focus on these projects. My focus is on a different project. So if you could give me a next, yes. It's as you mentioned, it's a project focusing on strengthening Danish participation in the Horizon Europe. The headline there is Danish, and it's a very long title for a project. However, just let's focus on Horizon Europe. It's not a EU project as such. However, it's funded by the Danish Agency for Higher Education and Science. Data shows that Danish researchers are quite successful at getting funds from Horizon Europe, the whole program as such. However, the Danish companies, small and large, or SMEs, are not as successful as companies from other European countries. So the agency would like to focus on this. That's what we have done since earlier this year. So what I will talk about today are conclusions thus far. However, we are a young cluster, but we are a combination of 5 older clusters who were merged in 2021. So we might be young, but we do have a lot of experience going back to 2009. In order to help us strengthen this participation in Horizon Europe, we make use of our employees, my colleagues, who sit at every university in Denmark, who sit in a shared position between the universities and the cluster. This gives us a very good opportunity to find the right researchers and spinouts for current calls or grants or what it might be. It could also be the other way around, that researchers, postdoc or professors, reach out to my colleagues at the university to find the right companies. Perhaps that company would be Danish, perhaps it wouldn't. but we do it in a collaboration. However, we can't do this alone, because what we have found is that Danish companies in our ecosystem do not know enough about the funding in order to know what's is actually fact and what is myths. So what we are focusing on doing in collaboration with experts in the field of funding. You mentioned EEN, Enterprise Europe Network, and we also have in Denmark, and I'm sure you also do in other European countries, the regional EU offices who are experts in all of the different funds, which we can't. We do not have the resources to know every single detail, but we can work together closely. So what we do has been up till now, we've done webinars, we've been on talks and panel shows or panel debates. Latest one was at Tech Barbecue, which some of you might know. It's a rather large event in Copenhagen, focusing on debunking a lot of these myths for startup companies in the EU, focusing on the horizon. Networking events. Here in October, we're doing a specific event for partnerships within the sector of cancer research, which is a focus of the EU, has been for years now. We share relevant grants and calls for the whole ecosystem as such, and we have found that doing all of these different things, as you probably know, gets not only for our members, we are member organizations, but we reach beyond that point, and people contact us and ask for more, and we can, with our partners, get the right information to people. So conclusion thus far is that our members and Danish companies as such, if we look at the startup companies and the SMEs and not Novo Nordisk, larger companies, they do not know enough about EU funding in the ecosystem. And we need to work closely with our partners in order to solve these issues. Next
right.
slide,
So,
please.
Georg, you mentioned cancer research. You mentioned healthcare. Is that the main focus? Is on health, or are there other kinds of startups that you're reaching out to?
We have all of our members have something to do with the healthcare sector. We have to, if we say that life science is not only pharma, but includes pharma, biotech, health tech, and the whole welfare technology, everything. It could be AI in diagnostics. So it reaches far. So what we do is everything is about health. That upcoming event is about cancer research, but we also do different things in the technology.
And then as Christoph was talking about the different funds, most people they know Horizon, and I'm sure a lot of these science projects or these science related startups would be good for Horizon, but then there are all those other funds that they're probably not aware of, and that's, I guess, where you can say, why don't you check out that fund, one of those that on that long list that Christoph talked about, that would be good for that particular startup, right?
Exactly. That's what we are trying to do. Right. And we are trying to, as I mentioned before, we focus on partnerships. We can't do it alone, but this project focuses on Horizon Europe, but as you say, this is where we start, but we try to reach beyond that.
Yeah, and it's good you have a presence at all these universities across Denmark. I think that that's a very important network to build.
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Björk. Stay on with us. Let's go to Eva Vicente Barragan, Operations Coordinator for Project and Project Management Engineer at ICAMSIL in León, Spain. I guess, Eva, you can tell us what ICAMSIL stands for. You're going to tell us about Mind the Gap, a Horizon 2020 project.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm Eva Vicente. I'm the Operations Coordinator in ICAMSIL, which is the International Center of Raw Materials and Advanced Materials in Castilla y León, which is a region we are based in Spain. And thanks to this industry that is based also in our region, we have the links to and the challenges that the industry needs to face. So this is how we detect how the ideas could be developed, and that's why I'm going to talk about Mind the Gap. But as to give you just a background for our activity, we count nowadays with more than 15 projects running. We have many kinds of projects. We run Interreg programs, Marie Curie actions, also Horizon Europe and AIDS 2020 projects, and I3 funds also. So today I'm going to talk about this InnoSub project because we have detected, thanks to the consortium we are part of the project, but also to the industry we are linked to. So we detected that the mining sector and raw materials need some sustainable solutions. We have identified the top challenges and needs that are needed for a greener tomorrow for the industry in their sector. So we plan the project around this idea. Next slide, please. As for the management of this project, this is special because we have two layers here. On the one side, we have the collaborative projects for SMEs to be funded and also additional support services for the businesses. But also we count on the second layer, which is the partners that are part of this project. So to develop the idea, we needed to count on these two layers, which made some difficulties for managing and financing the project. Next slide, please. And as that, we can count on some benefits, challenges, and I would like to give you some tips on this, based on this idea, on the development of the project. We developed an open code for the companies, as I mentioned before, so we can define what are the needs of the industry, and how they could develop collaborative ideas to solve the challenges that the mining industry and raw materials needs. And we funded 63 SMEs. So with all these 26 projects that were funded, collaborating between 8 countries, we counted on 134 applicants. You can see the numbers exactly in the slide. Next, yeah, thank you. With all of this, we counted on 26 new product services and technologies that were brought to the market. So this is clearly what are the benefits for us, but also for the industry. And we saw that for developing all of this, we used what is called Mind the Gap platform, which serves not only for the matchmaking of the different companies, but also to seek and to search for partnerships for new projects, not only in Mind the Gap. And like that, we detected that, okay, how can we use this platform or this tool to collaborate with another project? And that's how we developed the idea of Fight for Green, which is a new project that we have funded on the I3 program, which is running nowadays. And also we would like to develop new ideas like for the twinning program or Euroclusters to give continuity to this idea. So as a result, with all of these, the tips I would like to give you is that, as you can imagine, to run and finance open calls, makes more effort for the entities that are involved in a project. But like that, you can give opportunities to the industry and to the companies that are part of a cluster. So my tip, do not underestimate the human effort needed for developing these projects, and also to use the existing tools that you know that are actually running and working to develop new ideas and new tools for the future. And that's all on my side for the moment.
That's great, Eva. Thank you very much. Good advice. Good advice. And, we had a couple of weeks ago a session on shared management, and there were a number of people who were saying it's not easy to figure it out, and so, as you said, it's very important. There's help out there. There are groups like yours that can help navigate people through the call process. Okay, let's and before I get to Maurizio, just to remind everybody, please send in your questions. You can also raise your hand. I see questions coming in now, and we'll get to as many as we can, hopefully all of them. And also, if you click on that button at the bottom, raise your hand, you can actually ask the question yourself on camera. So let us go to Maurizio Male. That's the third and final of the project examples. Maurizio, you are cluster project manager of the Venetian cluster. You'll talk about Life Via, a life project, as we mentioned a bit earlier, environment and climate action. Let's hear about it.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chris. I'll briefly present what is Venetian cluster. It is a cluster based in Venice, Italy, about the valorization of environmental and cultural heritage. So we work with a lot of European funds. Today I am going to present the LIFE program and the example of the Life Via project we are currently running. But then we also work with COSME, Horizon Europe, Creative Europe. So a lot of funds dedicated to us as a cluster and to our enterprises, and with the collaboration with public bodies, municipalities, universities, etc. Next slide, please. So the Life Via is funded inside the climate change life program, and it is the idea started from the problem of destroyed forests by strong winds. In Italy, we had a very strong storm with a wind at 200 kilometers per hour and destroyed millions and millions of trees. So very large surfaces were destroyed, while in Spain, our Spanish partner in Galicia had a huge fire. So the problem is how to reconstruct forests after those big damages, considering that they are usually on public soils and public bodies have less and less money to restore the damage. So the idea was to include private enterprises to invest in reforestation and reconstruction of habitats in change of a temporary, we call it temporary agroforestry. So what you see in this very confusing and messy drawing here, but the red circles, the red areas are what we call forest gardens. So they are very small cultivations of autochthonous plants, but plants that are very useful for cosmetics, medicine, like officinal plants, or blueberries, strawberries, also for food, of course, and processing of food. They are planted there for 15, 20 years on a place that is completely without trees, because now the wind took out all the trees. So in the meantime, the forest regrowth and forest is replanted around the small cultivations. But so a private enterprise is working with public bodies to intervene in reforestation, and there is a mutual benefit, an exchange. So the private helps with reforesting and recreating the public forest, the public wood. using a mixed wood, so different species, increasing the biodiversity from previous forest that was monospecific. And the private is also producing food. So also enhancing local economy, creating jobs. So there is a benefit for the public body that has a replanted forest. So its capital of wood is recreated. The private enterprise can produce locally, and local people can have jobs, and biodiversity is increased. So there is also a multifunctional production, because besides the species, there are apiaries to beehives. So there are beekeepers producing honey and other products. And there is the possibility to use those areas for tourism or for didactic purposes. So bringing them professionals, technicians, students to see this scheme and how it is applied for an intervention of private and public land. Next slide, please. Okay, this was the example. So if you want to know more about the project, you can contact me or go to the project website. There are a lot of things in the project, but what we should focus on today is about the LIFE program and what can permit and what not. So the LIFE program is financing projects, of course, about the environment, environmental improvement, and there are many different measures from renewable energies to nature and biodiversity to climate change. In this case, it was a climate change adaptation project. The LIFE is funding 60%, so the direct EU funds are 60% of the budget. The remaining 40% has to be put by the partners with own resources or to find other co-financers to the project. The good thing is that as quite any other European project, pay slips can be included, so that the cost of staff can be used as a part of the co-financing. Our project was around 5 million budget. So LIFE is accepting very large project with good amount of money and with important activities, including also infrastructures. So small infrastructures are also permitted up to 500,000 euros. We have 11 partners, and we as Venetian Cluster are a partner or associated beneficiary is the name in the LIFE program, but we are supporting the lead partner, the coordinating beneficiary, for the coordination, monitoring, and management and reporting, because the lead partner is a private company, private small enterprise, and they don't have the experience to manage a LIFE project, so they need support. And we do other actions as a cluster in the project, especially for the replication actions. The duration is 5 years. Commonly, a LIFE project is 5 years, but can be up to 10 years or even more, especially for nature projects that need a long time to develop. And the objective of a LIFE project must be the improvement of environmental quality. So the biodiversity or reduce environmental impact also from enterprise processes. So also small enterprises can participate in LIFE if they have an idea or a patent or some new technology to improve the products or the processes in order to lesser the environmental impact. Also, LIFE permits to have businesses. So there are it is a new thing in LIFE program, the close to market projects. They are projects that are developing products or services that can be then sold in the market. So again, enterprises are facilitated to start new commercial activities, new products, new services. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits? What are the challenges of a LIFE program? The main challenge is the co-financing. I mean, 40% to be co-financed by partners is quite high. Other programs like Interreg or even Horizon start from 70% of financing by you, so less co-financing by the partners. There are the research and innovation project in Horizon that are financing 100%. So it is not appealing as a program because the financing is only 60%, unless there are nature projects on priority species and priority habitats that can get co-finance, they can get EU funding and up to 75%, but only for priority species and habitats. Another burden are the reporting procedures, not the official reports, because in 5 years, for example, we only have 2 official big reports and financial reports, but the LIFE program asks to have an internal monitoring. So there is an internal reporting to a monitor. There is a monitoring system appointed by the Commission, and every 3 months we have to generate a report including cost and financial report. Another important thing, challenging thing, are the key performance indicators. The indicators must be very detailed and very well monitored and accounted. And that's a lot of work. But about the benefits, of course, you have the possibility to create big projects in a long time, many years of project, of activities, and with quite huge budget. You can insert some small infrastructures. So, of course, they must be related to your project activities. Enterprises, private enterprises, even small enterprises can participate. They can also have develop or improve their business thanks to the project. There are many different calls. Also, single enterprises can participate, for example, as I said, in circular economy or environment calls to develop their products and improve their environmental systems. The good thing is to be included in European networks and to exchange with other projects. The LIFE program has a very good system, a very good organization of meetings among projects to exchange knowledge, ideas among different LIFE projects. And of course, also with other projects, Interreg project, Horizon projects. And final thing, especially for a private enterprise, is the marketing value. So being a partner or a lead partner of a LIFE European project gets a very good image because you are appointed by the European Commission as a subject who is doing something good for the environment and at European level. So that's the end of my presentation, and thank you everyone, and I'm available for any question. Thank you.
Great, grazie Maurizio. Thank you very much. Let me go then to get to some of the questions. And one is from Sophie. She says, I see that lots of you are using Erasmus Plus program. Can you give some examples of projects that you run thanks to this fund? Can anybody talk about how they're working with Erasmus Plus? None of the 3. Okay, that's with that's somebody else. Okay, and what about? I mean, a little bit more about the role that you play in that clusters can take on in different types of programs. What role can you take and play in a cluster program? Can I start with maybe Eva?
Yes, of course. I didn't mention before, but Icamthil is not a cluster itself, but originally we were part of the, we are part nowadays of the Very Sustainable Mining Cluster, but we were originally the holding the technical secretary of the cluster. So we are linked and we collaborate together. For me, the clear idea of what a cluster can bring to the benefits of being a cluster in the funding programs is to give access to the industry and to give access to the SMEs that are part of the cluster to a funding program that could be a booster to develop innovation ideas that otherwise they probably are not going to be developed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, with Mauricio, as you talked about, you're working with these different private sector companies that maybe they need help and support and advice, and I guess you're there to provide that support, and how the process can be on reporting and applying and so forth can be quite complicated, and you're there to help them, right?
Yes, of course, we support them in preparation of proposals, in finding partners, finding the calls. And I have to say, besides life that I explained, what we find very useful for companies and for clusters are the COSME single market programs. So there are cascade funding that we as a cluster are managing to provide money directly to enterprises. I think this is a very good thing because enterprises are not very good in presenting proposal at the European level. Yeah. There must be an intermediate subject to take funds from the European Commission and be able to distribute by selecting good projects. Also with the language, it is a problem, so we can work in Italian with Italian companies and distribute some money with an easier application process.
In fact, I mean, you mentioned Cascade funding. Emma has a question there. How do you search for Cascade FSTP calls? Do you have any advice on that, Mauricio?
Yes, of course. Always in the funding and tender, you can find the COSME calls. Not all COSME are including Cascade funding. So call by call, you have to read the call for proposals and see where Cascade funding are permitted. But I don't have in mind other programs, but I'm sure there are maybe some Horizon Europe with Cascade funding. But again, it depends on the single call.
Right. Björk, do you have anything to add there?
No, I'm just nodding because it seems that we have very similar experiences and opinions. All three of us. We also have success with the Cascade funding, like to be a translator for our company or members. It's wrong to say companies because we have the whole triple helix, or governmental organizations and universities and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So
and,
being a translator.
let me ask you this. I have another question from Anonymous. Life Science Cluster Denmark gathers many actors. Do you also cooperate with public buyers, as many of the products developed by the healthcare industry are bought by public buyers?
So do you expect that person means
hospitals?
Like in Denmark? Danish
I would assume, yeah, that's probably or clinics or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, in Denmark, most hospitals aren't private. So yes, we do have like close relationships with them because we are in this industry, healthcare. However, we do not. Our role is before, like it's before the product is bought, so to say. It's mostly it's to help researchers and companies find each other. It could be also mobile robotics for a hospital. How do we go about that? Could we try? Could a company come to a hospital which might be an old building? Do that. So yes, we do work with them.
Okay. Please do send in your questions through the Q&A button at the bottom, and we're also looking and watching the chat as well. You know, these cluster collaboration calls are also for sort of listening to what challenges, what barriers there might be to break through, what difficulties people face, and how we can solve that. Among the three of you, are there any suggestions you have in improving the process?
We find that the co-financing, as has already mentioned, that's because I've been nodding, is the reason for EU funding being deprioritized at times, often, because it's too difficult, at least for us in our sector. For instance, if it's a hospital or if it's an educational institution, it's difficult to find the co-financing.
Yeah, yeah. What about the application process, or any advice on that, Mauricio?
Well, as we are among clusters, I will say for cluster, it is very important to have someone very well trained and expert in project applications, management, coordination, reporting. So each cluster, I think, should have someone very experienced in managing EU funds. And that's the first thing, because then it is a service you can provide to your enterprises. And enterprises alone, they cannot have a project office dedicated to EU funds. So the cluster should support every enterprise with a centralized project office for European funds. And of course, read very well the call for proposals in every single word, because they are helping you on how to submit, how to proceed with the application.
Right, right. And what about all those funds that Christoph listed? Do you have all those in your mind when you're working with different startups and others? That's a lot of different opportunities, isn't it, Eva?
Yeah, it is true. Sometimes it's more easy to go to calls that we are used to, but it's true that the opportunities are there. So we need to all open our heads and our minds and seek for new opportunities not established in our list, in our day-to-day list. Yeah.
Because in mining, for instance, I mean, there are all kinds of opportunities. I would think there are some of the programs when you were talking about rare earths, for example, right?
Yeah.
Eva. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
another suggestion, we have, for example, a person dedicated to scouting the different calls. So every week we have someone looking for any kind of call and reporting to the single enterprises that are asking for support.
Okay. All right. Oh, here's a question from Emma. Which funding programs have the most cascade funding? Do any of you have advice on that, or perhaps I bring in Christoph?
Bring him in
Here.
For sure,
Christoph?
I think in the past.
Emma, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. For sure, in the past, I think it was in NOSUP, and nowadays it's probably the real clusters called.
Okay. Yes, Christoph, can we ask you that one as well?
I could not answer that question. I can investigate and come back to you, but unfortunately, I cannot answer the immediately.
Okay, I've got another one though for you. Does InnoSoup and COSME type of funds, will they be published in the future? If not, what are the alternatives? For I guess that's for Christoph, I think.
I apologize. The connection was cut for 1 minute.
Yeah, well, and the sentence is not complete, but does InnoSoup and COSME type of funds, will they be published in the future? If not, what are the alternatives to InnoSoup and COSME? Very technical for me. I hope you understand.
Well, I think the COSME program as a grant component and a financial instrument component. I think that it was split in two. I think the grant component remain in the single market program, while what is more financial instrument was grouped within what we call InvestEU, which is now implemented by the EIB for 75% and to a lower extent by National Promotional Bank. So depending on which type of support, financial instrument or grant, this is now split into, COSME is split into.
Okay, yes, and it's true. Marek came back with, if you look in the chat, there's information, InnoSoup and COSME. Sorry about that. Okay. Maybe any of the speakers would like to add about maybe what is perhaps the easiest project to get through the application process if somebody's thinking about doing this? What is the what makes it easier? What kind of project would make it easier to get through the application process? Can you think of that?
Well, I think for clusters, but it depends on the type of clusters. We were very happy with Creative Europe, which is quite more simple application than Horizon or Life application, but it is a good co-financing, and yes, and we had good results also. Of course, it must be adapted to what you want to do. It is not good for research and innovation, but it can be used because Creative Europe has many different calls, so it can be used also to develop some communication, marketing, or other types of activities.
Okay, yeah. Let me go to Björk. Yeah, this is kind of like a roundup. Final comments, suggestions.
I would say that a lot of our applications for EU funding are like larger funds, EU for Health or something similar, where we try to push the agenda of better solutions in the healthcare sector. So it's when we do partnerships with different types of hospitals that could be personalized medicine. So it's not the easy ones that we do. We do it when we have a very special consortium,
right,
of experts.
Okay, and finally, Eva, any final suggestions to make?
Yes. This is linked to the last question. I think that the lump sum calls are a good opportunity because even if the preparation of the proposals and the projects is more difficult than the others, the implementation saves a lot of time. So the opportunities are there and the ideas are there. So it's just to construct a good project with all of the components.
Okay, and I have a final question from Anna for Christoph. Anna says, we find it quite difficult to find something specific for tourism and hospitality in EU funding programs. Is there any specific program planned for that?
That's indeed a recurring question on support to tourism. It's true that we don't have a specific, among the direct management program, we don't have anything specific to tourism. So you indeed have to apply, for instance, to COSME. It's less prone to major innovation, so it's less eligible to Horizon. I think that's where you should rather look at funds under share management, because if you're in a region which is supported by the cohesion funding or by the rural development funds, there you can really get funding for this type of activity. But I think it's correct to say that among the program in direct management, this is not the focus of intervention at EU level.
Okay, but shared management, there is potential there. Great. Okay, well, this was great. thanks to all the speakers and some great advice. And from this, let's see what the takeaway is from those who are watching. Let's do another Slido. What are your takeaways for applying to the next calls? From what you've, all that advice, that very valuable advice that you just got, what are your takeaways when work? I think mine is you got to work closely with a cluster, because the clusters offer that support and advice that you so importantly need to get through. Have a scouting person for calls. Yeah. Direct management. Collaboration. And actually, it's the clusters that help in scouting, right? And they help to put together, when it takes a group of different companies to make that happen, then that's the value of manage complexity. Co-financing, yeah. Potential, not obstacles. There's good, a lot of good takeaways. Yeah, the consortium idea, yeah. Yeah, that cluster guidance. Yeah, that was good to see in these different sectors that Eva and Björg and Maurizio are in, how the value of clustering that effort to get that funding and to make something happen. That really shows you shows you the value of that. Christophe, anything to add there from one of those takeaways? I think that's quite encouraging, isn't it?
No, it's interesting, and it was interesting the comment that, I mean, people try to learn about how call in a specific program work and how to increase the chance of success. So I understand that sometimes there may be hesitation to try the experience, if I may say so, in another program, because the condition will be slightly different. And the first time you participate, you may not know well maybe how to submit a good application. So there is a learning process there, and so I understand that you cannot try everywhere, and somehow you need a bit of specialization, especially if you want to have success in the program where we are facing structural over subscription. That's a difficult choice to make to be sufficiently specialized, if I may say so, to be the one selected to get funding.
Yeah, that's right. And in the when we had that session on co-managed funds and projects, one of the suggestions from one of the speakers was you got to try a number of ways. You have to make several attempts. Don't just do one and then give up. You have to keep trying. If at first you don't succeed, try and try again. And that's, again, the value of the clusters, to give you that advice when you try again. So great. Well, thank you to all the speakers. Thanks, Björg, Eva, Maurizio, Christophe. And let's move on now to Nina for the funding opportunities.
Many thanks. Just to close the session, I just want to remind you, check out the funding intenders portal that was presented by Christophe, where you find all the information on the different calls from the different programs. You have the link in the chat, and this is what it looks like. You can either search by keywords, by programs, they're all listed here, and you can also filter according to the calls that are open. So have a look, browse into these to find out more about the calls. And since we talked about the cascade funding, the Euro clusters, which are implemented under the Single Market Program, are the ones that now offer cascade funding to SMEs. And there is a wide number of opportunities for SMEs open. From the Europe clusters, it's 30 in total, and they publish calls at different times and also for different activities, for example, for innovation, for the adoption of technologies or processes, for internationalization, for training, and in all the different industrial ecosystems. So you find open calls for SMEs, as you can see here on the screen, for water smart solution, e-health, renewable energy, mobility, textile, the creative industries, for manufacturing. We can go on to energy intensive industries, to aeronautics-based defense, and so on. So have a look at all these open calls that are currently implemented by us with opportunities for SMEs. They're published on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform under clustercollaboration.eu/open-calls. And last but not least, we would like to invite you to come to our Cluster Collaboration Lab, the C2 Lab, that is not only open for clusters, but also for SMEs, research organizations, and other interested entities to create new projects. We have heard a lot about the different funding programs that are available, so many opportunities, and we encourage you to dig in to find a new funding scheme that might be interesting for you for your idea. And we invite you to come to Slovenia on the 25th or 26th of October, or to Lithuania on the 14th and 15th of November to network, to make new connections with people who also like to apply for new calls and to find new consortia, new opportunities. And this is one in-person event where you can do that. And I think it's a great opportunity to come and to initiate your new project. So we will see you there.
Absolutely. Stronger together, Nina. Good networking, good information from these different events. So be sure to register for the next talks. There you see the next one coming up on the 4th of October, Industry 5.0. Make sure to register for the Cluster Collaboration Platform, and keep in mind that what you've seen over these during this session, you can look back at. This is recorded for playback. The slides are also available on the Cluster Collaboration Platform. Hashtag EU Clusters Talks if you heard anything you'd like to cast wider. And we'll see you next time. I'm Chris Burns. Thanks for watching.